Mescaline is a hallucinogenic compound with a long history of traditional use. It's found in many different cacti, with the most well-known being peyote. Mescaline produces similar changes in perception to LSD, but not quite in the same way. Mescaline is a hallucinogenic compound most notably found in the peyote cactus. It's also found in varying degrees in many other members of the cacti family. It's an alkaloid in the phenylethylamine class of compounds, which include other hallucinogens, as well as various stimulants, decongestants, and antidepressants. Research suggests that mescaline alters the consciousness similarly to psychedelics like psilocybin from magic mushrooms and LSD. Mescaline is found in high levels in the peyote cactus, and it acts as the major active compound. It's concentrated in small, circular, above-ground stems called buttons. The mescaline content in the dried buttons ranges from 2.8 to 3.5%. Peyote also contains other psychoactive alkaloids that may intensify the effects of the mescaline. According to some researchers, mescaline is one of the oldest known hallucinogens used by humans. One estimate suggests that Native Americans in Mexico used peyote as far back as 5,700 years ago. Allegedly, they considered it to be a divine substance with healing properties. Indigenous people of South America have reportedly used mescaline-containing cacti, such as the San Pedro and the Peruvian torch, in folk medicine and religious ceremonies for thousands of years. Scientific interest in peyote took off at the end of the 19th century after American newspaper reports of the ritualistic use of the peyote by the Native American tribes. The search was on to reveal the compounds that were responsible for peyote's psychedelic effects. The task was accomplished in 1896 by German chemist Arthur Hefter. After identifying mescaline as one of the active alkaloids in peyote, he tested it on himself and was able to prove that it was responsible for the psychoactive effects of the cactus. Then, in 1919, Austrian chemist Ernest Spath found a way to make mescaline in the lab. Shortly thereafter, some experimentally minded researchers and scientists began dosing themselves and publishing their findings. Psychiatrists in the 30s and 40s became particularly interested in mescaline's ability to mimic certain features of psychosis, a mental condition in which a person loses contact with reality. It can be caused by mental illness such as schizophrenia, as well as medications and life-threatening medical conditions. They thought that by artificially recreating the subjective experiences of psychosis, they could better understand the condition. In the 50s, British psychiatrist Humphrey Osmond began studying mescaline and LSD's ability to address mental illness, including alcohol addiction. He was somewhat successful, however, his work was cut short by the drug backlash in the 60s. He also had great success treating schizophrenia with large doses of niacinamide, a version of vitamin B3. Osmond later became friends with Aldous Huxley. The famous writer was introduced to mescaline after reading one of Osmond's papers and requested a sample. Huxley then went on to publish his seminal book, The Doors of Perception, which gave a detailed account of his experiences with mescaline, and it spurred public interest in the drug. Mescaline is also illegal in most countries. However, mescaline in the form of peyote is legal for religious use by members of the Native American Church. The Native American Church is a religion that combines Native American beliefs and practices with Christianity and ritualistic peyote use. Clinical research on mescaline was limited after the 70s ban, although recent years have seen an increase in research on hallucinogens like psilocybin. Mescaline has not been included in the resurgence due to its relatively low potency and long duration of effects. The primary mechanism by which mescaline causes the hallucinogenic effect is by activating the 5-HT2A serotonin receptor. All psychedelic drugs, including psilocybin, LSD, and DMT, share this mechanism. Mescaline also activates other serotonin receptors, the 5-HT1A, the 5-HT2B, and the 5-HT2C. This may contribute to its effects. These receptors have been implicated in learning, memory, anxiety, mood, and sleep. Besides serotonin receptors, mescaline also activates dopamine receptors in areas of the brain that are responsible for processing sounds and emotions. This may contribute to the drug's effect of distorted hearing and enhanced emotions. Limited research suggests that mescaline can increase the blood flow and the activity in the prefrontal cortex, which is an area of the brain that's implicated in planning and pursuing goals, solving problems, self-identity, and regulating emotions and behavior. Some scientists hypothesize that this may affect creativity and focus, and possibly underlie the changes in self-identity. By activating neurons in a part of the brain called the locus coeruleus, mescaline is hypothesized to increase the response to stimuli in the environment. According to one unverified theory, this can explain why some users become more sensitive to what's happening in their environment, and why the set and the setting is considered to be crucial during the psychedelic experience. Mescaline can also block the release of acetylcholine, a neurotransmitter that's used to contract muscles. This in turn blocks the cholinergic activity, and it may lead to the side effects such as muscle weakness and poor balance and coordination. Mescaline causes a heightened perception of colours, making them more vibrant and intense. Like most psychedelics, it can cause intense visual hallucinations. They've often been described as vibrantly coloured patterns, including fractals that occur more readily in dim light. Hallucinations of sound, smell, and taste can also occur, but they're much less common. Research and anecdotes suggest that it can also cause a distorted sense of time, so that the user becomes unsure of how long that they've been under the effects of the drugs. Hearing and perception of space can also be distorted. Some reports indicate that mescaline can cause synesthesia. This is a phenomena where the senses become mixed. For example, certain sounds can cause sensations in parts of the body, or certain letters or numbers can be associated with different colours. According to another report, users can also feel as if their body is weightless and that their limbs have changed in size or shape. Common to all psychedelics, mescaline can alter the user's concept of self. Research suggests that higher doses can cause ego dissolution, a complete loss of the sense of self and the boundaries between self and the rest of the world. Anecdotally, mescaline is said to often produce a dreamlike state of profound wonder. This state of mind may be accompanied by a feeling of euphoria. Interestingly, these kind of changes have been scientifically studied. They can be tracked using a specific questionnaire, the Altered State of Consciousness questionnaire. Some studies imply that LSD is 1,000 to 3,000 times more powerful than mescaline. Research suggests that the effects of both compounds can last up to 12 hours with higher doses. However, mescaline tends to last slightly longer. Because they share the same mechanism of action, mescaline and LSD have very similar effects. They both cause hallucinations. They increase suggestibility. They intensify emotions and colour perception, and they may create a subjective sense of deep mysticism or profound wonder. Users report slightly different subjective experiences, suggesting that they work differently in certain aspects. For example, mescaline is more likely to distort the user's body image, while the loss of control of thoughts is more common with LSD. LSD can also cause sexual feelings, something that's rarely reported in mescaline users. The enhancement of colours appears to be more common with mescaline. Another key difference between the two is that mescaline has not been reported to produce flashbacks, which are also known as hallucinogen persisting perception disorder. Flashbacks occur when visual and auditory disturbances previously experienced during a trip reappear when you're not using the drug. Despite their differences in potency and effects, some researchers think that mescaline and LSD have enough in common that they're hard to tell apart. In fact, in a blind clinical trial, people were unable to distinguish which one that they'd been given. A couple of researchers were interested in whether mescaline can affect creativity and problem-solving skills back in the 60s. In the studies from the 60s, mescaline seemed to produce changes in thinking that were implicated in creativity. For example, the authors suggested that it improved the ability to make associations between unrelated concepts or ideas. It reduced inhibitions and self-judgment, and it enhanced imagination. The researchers wondered if these effects could translate into solving problems that require creative thinking. To do so, they recruited 27 people who worked in jobs that require creative problem-solving ability, like engineers, physicists, and furniture designers. The researchers gave them 200 milligrams of mescaline sulfate, and then told them to work on problems related to their field that required a creative solution. The participants also took tests to measure their creativity both before and during the mescaline session. Research suggested that the mescaline increased creativity as was measured by the tests. It was also proposed to improve their ability to solve creative problems by boosting concentration, increasing the capacity for visual imagery, improving the ability to see problems from different angles, and improving the sense of knowing when the right solution appears. Purportedly, these improvements were still seen when the participants were assessed 2 weeks later. The authors thought that the mescaline might put people into the right mindset for creative problem solving, but this has never been verified in proper clinical trials. One study looked at the mental health of 61 long-term peyote users in the North American church and compared them to 79 members of the Navajo tribe with no or little history of drug use. According to the study, the peyote users reported better psychological well-being and more positive emotions. Another study of over 130,000 people suggested that mescaline use was linked to lower rates of both serious psychological distress and needing psychiatric medication compared to never using the drug. Mescaline use was also associated with a lower rate of agoraphobia, an anxiety disorder where people fear environments that might cause them to feel trapped or helpless. Some scientists think that serotonin receptor activators might have the potential to treat alcohol and cocaine dependence. A couple of clinical trials suggest that LSD has the potential to help with alcoholism, but large-scale data is lacking. Nonetheless, some research teams are interested in further exploring mescaline due to its comparable mechanisms and effects. There's also been sporadic reports of members of the Native American Church using peyote to prevent alcohol abuse. The effects of mescaline on learning in humans is unknown. In higher doses, mescaline improved learning in goldfish. However, lower doses actually decreased the ability to learn to avoid a negative stimulus. How this may translate to humans remains a mystery. Some research suggests that taking mescaline in a safe, familiar environment may help to reduce the risk of harm, but this has never been verified in human studies. Mescaline caused brain, spinal cord, and liver issues in newborns of pregnant animals. Psychiatrist Humphrey Osmond, who used mescaline in his practice, noted that people who had hepatitis experienced prolonged responses to mescaline. Long-term risks of mescaline are unknown since proper clinical data is lacking. A study of 61 Native American church members claimed that peyote use had no negative effects on mental function or psychology. Another study of 130,000 people didn't find an association between mescaline or peyote use and rates of mental health issues. Mescaline can produce a wide array of effects on the body, including dilated pupils, blurred vision, sweating, dry mouth, elevated heart rate, high blood pressure, fidgeting and restlessness, muscle weakness, poor coordination and balance, headaches, nausea and vomiting. During the first 4 hours, body temperature can slightly decline. Thereafter, body temperature increases and becomes moderately high. Blood sugar may also rise for the first hour and then possibly return to normal over the course of the next following couple of hours. Side effects tend to resolve within 24 hours. Mescaline has the potential to cause negative thoughts and emotions, including sadness and irritability, fear, anxiety and nervous excitement, depersonalization, a difficulty expressing thoughts and focusing, delusions and paranoia. The 5-HT2A receptor is thought to play a key role in the development of schizophrenia and psychosis. By activating this receptor, mescaline can produce temporary changes in the brain that mimics those that are seen in psychotic episodes caused by schizophrenia. No studies have clearly demonstrated that mescaline causes psychosis or schizophrenia. There's a case report of an otherwise healthy person undergoing a 2-week-long psychotic episode after taking peyote, in which they experienced visual and auditory hallucinations and could barely sleep. Their symptoms resolved when they got proper sleep. There have been a few clinical trials examining the effects of mescaline in chronic schizophreniacs. The drug produces similar effects in this population as it does in normal volunteers, including visual hallucinations, distorted body image, distorted sense of time, euphoria, and paranoia. However, mescaline also caused schizophrenic patients to become highly sexual, verbalizing sexual desires and past experiences. This is rare in normal volunteers. In general, the hallucinogenic experience is much more intense for schizophrenic patients, and it causes a notable increase in anxiety and distorted thoughts. Mescaline appears to enhance the symptoms specific to the type of schizophrenia that the patient has, such as paranoia, fear, and disorganized thinking. Despite the increase in symptoms, the experience has been described as potentially useful in some patients. In a study of 24 hospitalized schizophrenics, one patient was able to return home after a significant improvement in her condition. Several other patients experienced partial improvements, but their symptoms returned within the following weeks. Drugs that block the 5-HT2A receptor have been suggested to reduce the effects of mescaline. These include antidepressants, antipsychotics, and pistifen, which is used to treat migraines. Members of the Native American Church warn of combining alcohol with peyote. Studies imply that mescaline does not pass through the blood-brain barrier very well. Theoretically, this means that higher doses are needed for psychoactive effect. Likely because of this, mescaline is used less frequently than other psychedelic hallucinogens like psilocybin or LSD. In clinical trials, doses between 200 to 500 milligrams of mescaline sulfate were used. The scientifically described hallucinogenic dose was 5 milligrams per kg of body weight, or 350 milligrams for a 70 kg person. Each peyote button contains around 45 milligrams of mescaline. The buttons are usually dried and people eat them or soak them in water to drink. Research suggests that tolerance to mescaline builds after repeated use over the course of days. Taking mescaline can also cause a tolerance to LSD and vice versa. Cross-tolerance with psilocybin is also likely due to their similar effect on the serotonin receptors. According to one study, cross-tolerance can also occur with morphine. Mescaline is the active hallucinogenic compound found in peyote and other cacti. It's got a history of use which dates back thousands of years. Compared to other psychedelics, there's few clinical trials exploring the effects of mescaline. Research suggests that it's likely due to its greater onset of action and duration. The compound may cause a number of physical and mental health side effects. It may also increase schizophrenia symptoms and cause much more intense effects in people with this disorder. Mescaline remains classified as a Schedule I drug. Until more research emerges or regulations change, mescaline use outside of research or a medical environment is not considered safe. For more information on the related practice, microdosing, check out my video on microdosing LSA and LSD. For information about herbs, supplements, or health conditions, check out my website.